All right. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. Welcome to The Most Important Thing. I'm Danielle DeMarco Neufeld.
And I'm Greg Neufeld. And together we're exploring how ambitious, busy families build culture at home.
Because after all, family is the most important thing. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Most Important Thing, episode 17 on spirit.
Spirit in the sky.
That's right. Somewhere, everywhere. This is the 8th episode in our wholehearted parenting journey. And the line from the manifesto is, when uncertainty and scarcity visit, you will be able to draw from the spirit that is a part of our everyday life.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
No,
All these lines are beautiful.
They are. I know. So spirit.
So spirit. Where would you like to begin?
Well, we're trying to teach our kids about our spirituality, or what's the objective here?
Yeah. So, for me, the objective is to bring it more into a part of our everyday life. An analogy, a story, if you will. To me, spirit really showed up for me when we went to the library this past weekend, and up on the shelf was this beautiful neon colored, awesome looking 900-page book that the kids gravitated towards right away. And it was actually the book that I was 97% of the way finished reading. I subsequently finished it that night.
You got to say what book it is.
It's part of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. It's called The Butcher's Masquerade. I guess it's number 5. But the kids were like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest book, Mommy. You have to get it. And I was like, I have this book. This is the book that I am reading. And I read it on Kindle every night, so nobody really sees it. And it's awesome. And I love it. And it's my own personal little thing. But here I am hiding from all of you this amazingly rich and wonderful thing that until it was sitting on a shelf, I didn't even think to talk to you about. And that's really how I feel about my spiritual life as well. It's this beautiful, rich, incredibly important. Honestly, probably the most important thing to me, because if I don't have a spiritual foundation that for me is close to my higher power, I can't show up for my family. And yet, I don't really talk about it with anybody in our family. And so I would like kind of in this conversation for us to come up with some ideas of how to bring our spirituality, each of our own, into the everyday in a way, not so that we can project it onto our children, but to model that we are each innately spiritual beings, and to really authorize each of our children to go on their own spiritual journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm on board with that. And I do think that the analogy is very strong here in that we each have spiritual practices that the kids do not see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So how do we bring those out and talk about them, but not just talk about them, embody them, really show up in the world with our kids and help them notice what we're seeing from a spiritual connection perspective as those events or serendipity unfolds.
Right. Yeah. I think it's important to note that we are not a religious family. So I grew up Catholic and you grew up Presbyterian.
Yep.
Right? But your father was Jewish.
Yep.
And we have not, though we do kind of culturally celebrate Christmas, we don't have a house of worship or a framework or language, if you will, or community, really, that someone, that a family that is religious does share. And so this is yet another opportunity for us to paint a blank canvas, right? And to bring our intentionality to kind of create our own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
I think we do both believe, and I would say that neuroscience is currently backing us up. So I did some research prior to this episode and learned a bit about the work of Dr. Lisa Miller, whose neuroscience studies are fMRI scans of the brain. And they have shown that, we are innately spiritual beings, and that the brain, whether someone is standing on a mountaintop or kneeling in a pew, there is a part of the brain that lights up that is directly related to spiritual experience. And that everyone has that part of the brain. And they have found that those who have rich, deep spiritual life actually have more developed cortical thickness in those areas that are also tied to decision-making and emotional control. So what they have found is that if you have a deep spiritual life, you have lower markers for the risk of depression and higher capacity for both empathy and compassion.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
So I think that what I take away from this is really that we are all innately spiritual beings, and the way that we choose to embody our spirituality, to engage with our spirituality, can look different and doesn't necessarily have to equate to religion.
Mm-hmm.
I think that religion if you find a religion that resonates with you, it gives you so much of what Dr. Lisa Miller is talking about when it comes to a strong spiritual life, right? It gives you language, it gives you a framework, it gives you a place to worship, it gives you community. And so that is amazing. Maybe you like your family's faith tradition. Maybe that works for you. Maybe you found something else that works for you. Religion is a beautiful way to be a spiritual being, but it's not the only way to be a spiritual being.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where you and I find ourselves today.
Just about everywhere, interestingly. Like,
I know.
Like, we don't live in a gated community here in Florida, so it's harder to connect with and find other like-minded families, but we are finding them, and we're finding them through the podcast, not just locally, but all over. So that's an example of this in play, right? That's like the analogy there of having a place of worship versus being spiritual, but a little bit more of a wanderer.
Yeah. I mean, I think with everything, like you identify as a rebel, right? As someone who questions almost all rules and really has a much stronger sense of right and wrong internally as opposed to some type of external force. Is that fair to say?
For sure.
Whereas I am much more of an upholder, where I like to uphold my own internal rules, but also external rules as well. But marrying you, I think I've become much more of a rebel.
Yeah.
In the sense that, you know, you and I like to we are very intentional. I think that is the number one word that our friends and family would use when it comes to us.
Yes.
But, you know, we were watching our new favorite show, at least season 1, Couples Therapy, the other day. And one of the women on the couch with her husband is a very intentional person. And the psychoanalyst asked her, she said, you know, you are obviously very intentional and you have a strong direction on where you would like to take your life. But as a psychoanalyst, I have to wonder, what is the shadow side of that? What is the fear that comes up if you are not in control? And that really hit me. It really hit me because I think that I'll just speak for myself and say that I do think that spirituality and this idea of surrendering to my higher power is incredibly important balance and perspective in my life, because it is the flip side of all the intentionality that we have.
Yeah.
And so it is probably, though, not something that I share with our kids so much.
Sure.
And they probably see me more as this like control freak, because I keep these moments of grace and surrender. They're really my own.
Mm-hmm.
Can we go a little bit deeper on your alignment with your higher power and what your spiritual life looks like today?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. The idea that, what was the book? The War of Art. Do you remember this book?
I do. Isn't this the one that originally gave you the term fight the resistance?
It is. So fighting the resistance in art, in life, means when you don't want to do something, when I don't want to do something, question why that is and get really curious about that and then fight against it, because it usually is going to be a movement towards alignment with the universe. Mm-hmm. There's so many reasons that I stay curious about resistance, but the main one is because I know that when I sense that resistance and I push against it and I open that door successfully, that's when I feel most connected to the universe. So it helps me to not just fight the resistance on any one occasion, but to search for alignment and fight the resistance on all occasions.
So I guess what you're also saying is that the universe is here, ready and willing to help you and to conspire to help you. And sometimes you just have to hop back into alignment.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So if I may, Dr. Lisa Miller has some ideas of how to bring spirituality into everyday practice. And I would love for us to consider them with our family as an experiment.
Absolutely.
So the first one is serve other people. So the idea being that when you go outside yourself, you are a living prayer of love, held, guided, and never alone. And I think that that is one that we are working to develop with our family, is this service arm, service engine, if you will, but even everyday ways of serving other people. Like if there's someone sick in our community or someone needs us to take care of their pet, things like that. Really just, well, I don't know. Is there anything you want to say about that?
No, I agree. I see that our kids gravitate naturally towards active service. And so I feel like maybe there's something lost along the way in not developing that muscle for me. And I'm not just a witness, I'm an active, curious participant.
Yeah. So I think that getting into the habit of serving other people in both big and small ways is the closest, is like a very quick way to feel connection to something greater than yourself. Okay. So the first one is serve other people.
Yep.
The second, which is my favorite, is to perceive synchronicity. So thank the universe when you experience unique, most improbable events. And those don't happen all the time for me, but I do think that they happen way more often than I realize.
For sure. These are like daily events, I think.
Okay. Tell me more.
I've got this little journal prompt lately. So in the morning, I write down the lever for the day, which is the most important thing to get done. And then in the evening, I write down 4 things. One is the insight, any insight that I had. So that's a good place to look for the serendipity. 2 is the shift. So like, what do I want to shift into tomorrow? And sometimes that's just like, oh, today was a lot of creative thinking. Tomorrow I'd really need to do blocking, tackling. Or we're recording on a Friday. Friday was a great recording session day. Tomorrow I just want to be with my family and not be checking my phone or something like that. And then the relationship, which is who or what do I want to have a relationship with? Sometimes that's myself. Sometimes that's a version of myself. Sometimes that's a different version or relationship that you and I have. So like, instead of being co-hosts tomorrow, let's just be whatever, right? Let's be parents. And then the last one is recall. So I made this one up because I realized that the days just like blur together. And so my recall is either a moment of the day or just like I'll talk through the day and how it went. And I usually find something that I forgot already. And so I found that to be really interesting, especially reflecting at the end of the week, looking back at my week and seeing these journal prompts. So maybe for you, it's just, what's that one moment of serendipity that I saw looking back at each day?
Yeah. Okay. I like it. I'm also caught up a little bit because I'm a word nerd and I said synchronicity and you said serendipity.
Oh, right.
And so I'd like to actually talk about the difference between the two of
that.
those. Okay. So I'll tell you the definitions and you can tell me like how you perceive the differences. Sure. But so synchronicity is a very specific Carl Jung term that means meaningful coincidence. So it's when events occur together in a way that feels connected, even though there's no clear like causal relationship. So it's mysterious and spiritual, where the universe is trying to tell you something. Serendipity, I don't think it has any psychological relevance. It's a happy accident, a chance event that turns out to be beneficial. And it's more of like a lucky, playful, lighthearted type of thing.
Yeah, I think I use them probably interchangeably because I believe that you can't control either. But as Paul Graham says, you can create more surface area for luck. And that is what I believe being in alignment with the universe actually means, is doing the next right thing for, even when it's a hard thing, to create more surface area for lucky events or synchronous events to happen to you, because you can't cause them to happen.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I guess I think of serendipity as like when we happen to run into our friends at the farmer's market. That feels like a happy accident. Like I'm so happy that I got to see their faces on a Saturday morning. I wouldn't say that it was a deep spiritual experience. It was just like, it was a great highlight in my day. Synchronicity is like the fact that you and I met at Zuma on Wednesday, April 8th, 2015, when neither of us were supposed to be there. Like that is synchronicity.
Yeah, that's very true. Does synchronicity have to be big events though?
It has to be deeply meaningful events.
Okay. So then, yeah, those aren't every day.
Like we had one not even mutual friend, like third degree connection of mine kind of thing and friend of yours. Like we had been in similar spots probably in New York City 1 or 2 other times in our lives, but neither of us were supposed to be there. And if we hadn't met that night, it's not like we would have met the next week or the next week or the next week. Like
no.
That was truly a once in a lifetime opportunity.
It really was.
That we both happened to show up and just gravitated towards one another immediately
So true.
in front of DJ Jade.
I mean, there's so many more crazy things about that story. I had just gotten off a plane earlier that day. I had buried my grandmother, not literally, but she had passed away a couple weeks prior. I was right here in Del Rey when my grandmother was sick, and I was visiting her in the hospital just up the road. And I decided to make all these big decisions after that because I finally felt the weight of all of my ancestors lifted off of me. My parents weren't around. All of my grandparents had passed. She was the last remaining one. And I decided I need to live life for myself. And so I made some really big decisions. And when I finally came back to New York 3 weeks later, Danielle was right there. And it was unbelievable.
Do you want to say the other thing? You can say the other thing.
What's the other thing? The other thing that I was married?
Yes.
Yeah, I was married. And I knew in my heart of hearts that that was me looking for continued family now that everyone was dying. The only reason I was going to get married was because my dad was still alive and he didn't even live to see it. And 8 months into the marriage, I was like, I'm sorry, I just can't do this. I don't want to have children with this person. And I came back to New York to tie up those loose ends. Otherwise, I would have stayed in Florida. And later that night, like having done the hard things, fighting the resistance, pushing through all of the uncomfortableness, all of the blowback from extended family and, people getting really concerned about me and decisions that I was making. And I was just like, nope, I'm doing this for myself. And I was living, that was probably the most aligned I've ever felt.
Yeah. So hopping back into alignment with the universe, having explicit, difficult conversations with people that you cared about.
Yeah.
And really naming what you needed. Like literally same day turnaround. I mean, I think about our meeting kind of the most perfectly imperfect time for you ever. Like in what universe are you telling someone that you would like an annulment by day and meeting your future wife by night? It's wild.
It's so wild. Wouldn't even make a good movie because it's not believable.
I know. And I don't consider myself to be the type of person who would have gone on a date with you had that not been known. You know what I mean? Had it not been explicit that you were moving towards annulment proceedings.
Well, I think it was, that, and you met a bunch of my friends who were just like so happy to have me, just like happy to see me living in alignment after.
Yeah, it was palpable.
I was in a really dark place for a long time. And, as we talked about on the last episode, like, that's been a pattern and I didn't understand it until much more recently. So it's, the alignment that I've been feeling with the universe is really the purest sense of am I feeling like I can look myself in the mirror and say that I'm happy with all the choices that I made. And today, I mean, unquestionably. But 10 years ago, like up until I met you, I had just started to turn the corner and make those changes after a really dark period of seeing both of my parents die, my two grandmothers die, and being in a relationship that didn't serve me, but that I needed to get out of the New York City spiral that was otherwise going to bring me down. So yeah, synchronicity.
Synchronicity. Okay. So serve other people, perceive synchronicity. And then the third one is to pause and feel the sacred in nature or in memories. So basically she says say wow a lot. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to share our spirituality with our children is really definitely episode 2, family stories, right? But being in nature together and experiencing awe and wonder and just the power of things outside of ourselves is also a great opportunity to share our spirituality.
Yes, absolutely. We're in a great place for it.
What else do we want to say?
I feel very connected to the universe because of you and this family. And I feel very connected to this family because of the universe. It's like this is a relationship that we do have with the higher power, everything that happens with this family.
I love that. Yeah. So when it comes to spirituality, I would like to spend more time sharing that with all of you. If I think about Our last episode was on joy. And I was like, I want to take some of my joy back because it feels a little bit too connected to all of you. I'm kind of saying the opposite when it comes to my spirit, my sense of spirit and spirituality, which is that I feel like I have made it such a deeply personal and unique thing that I would like to spend more time being a little bit more showy about it, like sharing it with all of you. In an attempt to really authorize our children to have their own spiritual journey. I think for a little while there, I have been concerned up until this episode, really, that my lack of sharing with our children has caused them to have a spiritual gap. And I don't think that's actually the case anymore. So, just because we are not having them say prayers at night or having them go to church on Sunday or doing different rites of passage, all of which are beautiful for those that it resonates with. This past Friday, I asked Hunter what God means to her. It was actually hilarious. We were out on the climbing dome after a Friday night family meal. And I said, Hunter, what does God mean to you? And this neighbor was like walking her dog at that exact moment, and must have thought that I was so cringe, like absolutely, because who hears? And I heard her scoff and laugh. But I mean, it was a laughable thing. I am that mom. I'm that mom that asks what God means to you on a Friday night while you're playing. So it's fine. I own it. But
I love that.
It was hilarious. Anyway, so when we did kind of open up that conversation with our kids, leading with Hunter, being the oldest, I was profoundly inspired by what I heard, which was really that, help me encapsulate it, if you will. But she said that God, first of all, she used the word spirit, which I thought was awesome. And we haven't used that word spirit in talking with her, but she said that, when I feel God all around me and I feel spirit everywhere, and it's kind of the opposite of you, mommy. Like I can touch you, or I can, what did she say? She said, I can see you, but I can't feel you. Whereas with spirit, I can't see it, but I can always feel it.
Yep.
Wow. It's awesome.
Profound. And
then she said, Mom, I feel like spirit is leading me when I have big emotions.
Right.
That is when I feel closest to God. Right? And then we were talking a bit more, and I said, well, what do you do when you want to tap into God or spirit? And she said, I breathe. She said, well, I always breathe, but I breathe with intention, and that's how I connect to spirit.
Something's working.
That is her own compass. And I'm so excited. Like, I'm just so grateful and I guess exhaling, because I do feel like this is something I've been avoiding, but we are all innately spiritual beings.
Yep.
And I guess I was really worried that if we didn't give them a religion, they would not have a spiritual connection. And that's not what I'm finding.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So that feels good.
Yeah. I think the last thing to bring up, if I may, is one important lesson from the boundaries episode that I think carries over here. There's a lot of people in our children's lives who are religious. And what we've asked of them is that they just talk about religion from their perspective. They never share anything about matter of fact.
Right. It gets back to this idea of allowing the children to explore their own spiritual lives, right?
Exactly.
And I think that all of the adults and all of the religious folks in their lives have been very respectful of this request.
Yep.
Which is that they will share what God means to them, maybe what heaven and hell mean, but in a way that is deeply personal, as opposed to one that is telling the children that is how they must believe as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I always thought it was odd growing up, because we went to Presbyterian church, but it was only my mom, my brother, and I that would go, and my dad would not go except for Christmas Eve. And I do feel like in a family where we are exploring spirituality together, it's important to explore together. We've tried going to some different services as a family.
We have.
And I think that it's important that we all went together, even if any of us were feeling some resistance, about it. It's really important, and that's the thing that I want to model for my kids, is to know that they are loved and to know that I'm there to support their exploration, and I show up with an open mind. Even if it's not necessarily a space that I feel comfortable exploring, I want to be there to hold their hand as they explore it for themselves.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Really, thank you, because I do think that it doesn't have to be that deep, is what I want
Exactly.
to say, is that like we can all explore together. And if we go to a house of worship, that doesn't mean that you are immediately indoctrinated into the culture, right?
Yep.
And into the religion. We can explore and have a deep respect for other religions, for religions in general, without feeling like it has to be the one
Yeah.
that resonates with us. I mean, for me, there is so much in any house of worship that I have ever been in when it comes to singing and being part of a community that is so spiritual
Yeah.
that I'm happy to take what I like and leave the rest, if you will.
Yeah.
And sometimes we show up for other people, right? Inside and outside this family. And sometimes we show up because we're going through something and we are really in need of a space that is safe and welcoming and full of love.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's really a beautiful thing to just be in it together.
Absolutely. So what can we commit to when it comes to the spirit that is a part of our everyday lives?
The dialogue with our kids is, I would say, the most important, because understanding more about when the spirit shows up for Hunter and what she's been feeling. I mean, this is a kid that they can't go to the doctor's office, but that can get on stage in front of hundreds of people, no problem, and thrives in that environment.
Yeah.
So just trying to understand from her where she's really feeling that higher power, I want to do more of. What about you?
Yeah, I really like this idea of exploring together. I'm thinking about the latest season of White Lotus, where the daughter was like actively wanting to become a Buddhist, and no one in her family really wanted to support her, and they were very scared. And that's kind of like the antithesis of what I want.
Yeah.
I truly, deeply want my children to explore their own spiritual journey, and I am excited to see how it's different from mine. Honestly, I think that I can learn a lot from what resonates with them, and I look forward to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just no pina coladas.
Yikes. Yeah, so definitely committing to that. And then also, I think this idea of awe and wonder, talking more about synchronicity, but then also just saying wow a lot and really naming it when I feel connected, because I do feel connected to the universe and to my higher power all the time, especially at sunrise. And lately, Jade and Hunter have been coming with me for my Winston walks. And I think that would be a great time to share with them. So I can commit to that as well.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Cool. Okay, great. I love talking about spirit. Thanks for connecting with me on this.
Yeah, me too. I want to keep exploring this topic with you too, not just with the kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah. I think there's more to do.
That's a really good point. Do you have any ideas?
Part of it we're doing already.
Like the most important thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, this is an outlet for exploring more together. I don't know what the other part is.
Okay, I have an idea, but you can tell me if you don't want to do it. But
Yeah,
could we just
please.
like try it tonight? So the poem that was read at our wedding is from a book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. What do you think about maybe reading a passage of that like before bed when we get in bed each night? Could we try that tonight?
Sure.
Just like reading it and maybe reflecting upon it for like a couple of minutes before
Yeah.
bed?
Yeah. I mean, I must say I've been getting a little fatigued we have an evening practice where we go through each one of our values.
We have 12 values
Yeah.
and we talk about one every night for 1 month. And we've been doing that for like 6 years, six or
Yes.
7 years, I guess.
Yep. I think it might be time to try something like this.
Like a little book club?
Yeah.
Okay. I love
Yeah.
a book club.
I think I'll be more present for that as well than
Okay.
as opposed to something that needs to be reflecting on the whole day. Let's just like show up and be curious.
Yeah. And like learn
And learn
something
something,
new,
yeah.
kind of more pull versus push,
Yeah.
if you will. Something that's coming
Yep.
to us
Mhm.
to reflect upon. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Let's try it tonight.
Cool.
I'll get the book out.
Okay.
Yay.
Yay.
Okay. Love
All
you,
right.
Goosey.
Love you, Goosey.
Hey guys, if you're still here, you're definitely our kind of person. Thanks for spending this time with us on the most important thing. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to follow us wherever you get your podcasts and share it with someone else building family culture on purpose.